Hey guys, it's Chris from Highland Guitars, and you're watching another episode From the Luthier's Workbench. This episode is going to be part 5 of the Steampunk guitar building project that I've been working on. If you're interested in building your own guitar, whether it's from scratch or from a kit, or maybe you just want to keep your existing guitars healthy and performing at their best, I would highly encourage you, if you don't already subscribe, to click that subscribe button down below. Oh, and if you want to get caught up, maybe you missed out on some of the previous steampunk guitar building videos. At the end of this video, I'm going to post a link to a playlist I've created that will include this video as well as all the previous 4 parts that I've already posted. And I'll keep updating that as new episodes are posted up on YouTube. So we got a lot to cover in this episode. Let's jump in and get started. Today I'll be carving the body from a blank which I prepared in a previous episode. The first step in this process was to make a 3D model of the guitar body, and then I had to decide how I was going to use my CNC machine to carve this. Would I be using 2-dimensional carving operations or 3-dimensional carving operations? And as it turns out, I use both. I'll start by carving the back side of this guitar body, and that means cutting out the comfort contours such as the belly relief you see here. And to do that, I'm using a 1/4-inch diameter solid carbide 2-flute spiral upcut bit for both the rough carve as well as the finish carve. Next up was the neck relief carve, which used the exact same rough and finish strategy. And then the last carving operation on the back was the control cavity. And with all the back cutting operations complete, I was able to remove the blank and flip it over to start carving the other side. And you're probably wondering why I don't have a dust shoe on here. It's because I don't use it when I'm shooting video. The first cutting operation on the front side involves cutting the steampunk design elements, and I started by using an 1/8 of an inch diameter 2-flute spiral upcut bit for the rough carve. The details of the design are brought out using the finishing carve, which is accomplished with a 1/16 of an inch diameter solid carbide 2-flute spiral upcut bit. The last cutting operation on the guitar body involves cutting the perimeter shape as well as the pickup pockets and the neck pockets. And this was done using that same 1/4-inch diameter 2-flute spiral upcut bit I was using earlier. And then once that carving operation was done, I could remove the blank from the CNC's wasteboard and then move on to cutting the tabs that held the body into the blank. And I just used a small coping saw to cut those little tabs so that I could liberate the body from the blank. It took about 4.5 hours to cut out this body from the blank, with most of that time being taken to cut the steampunk design elements on the lower bout and upper horn. Next, I had to move on to carving out the corners of the neck pocket because a CNC machine using round bits leaves round corners, and the end of my heel on the neck has square corners, so I had to cut out those rounded corners so that the neck would fit properly. Then I took the body to my oscillating spindle sander and just sanded off the tabs as well as some of the residual CNC tool marks. Next, I grabbed a drill with a super long 3/8 inch diameter brad point drill bit to drill the holes for the wiring. Then I grabbed a 7/8 inch diameter Forstner bit and used that to drill the hole for the jack. So at that stage, the body is mostly complete and I can set it aside and begin working on the neck. So I grabbed a sharp chisel
and peeled away the glue squeeze out from when I glued on the fretboard. Then I grabbed some 150 grit sandpaper and began sanding the surface of the neck to remove tool marks and just to kind of clean things up a bit. And one of the things I like to do is to wrap my sandpaper around one of the rubber drums that I use with my oscillating spindle sander and use that to hand sand some of the hard to reach curved areas, such as where the headstock joins the neck shaft itself, as well as the detail on the front of the headstock. And once I finish with the 150 grit, I'll switch to 220 grit, which is as far as I'll go before applying the finish. Next up, I had to drill holes for my glow-in-the-dark fret marker dots. I'll be using lumen lay, which comes as a long rod, and to install it, I simply flood the hole that I drilled with some CA glue. Then I dip the end of the rod into some accelerator and then clip off the rod and move on to the next one. And then once I have all of those holes filled, I can then sand down the edge of the fretboard with some 220 grit sandpaper to get those dots flush with the surface of the fretboard. And then at this stage, I wanted to make sure that the radius of the fretboard was straight and true. So the first thing I did was adjust the truss rod until the fretboard was flat. Then I took it to my 30-inch long, 12-inch radius sanding block and began lightly sanding the surface with 220 grit sandpaper just to remove the last of the tool marks left by the CNC machine. Once everything was straight and true, I was good to go.
If you've missed out any of the parts of this series, have no fear. I've created a playlist, and I'll post a link to that playlist right here, and that includes all the parts of this series, including this one, which is part 5. And you can watch those at your leisure, or you can watch them all at once and do a binge thing if you want to. At any rate, next week I'll be posting part 6 of this series. And what I plan to be doing, among other things, is I'm going to be adding some creative details to the body that I just cut out on my CNC machine. And all I'm going to say is it's going to involve a ball-peened hammer. So I encourage you to stay tuned for that. In the meantime, take care, have a great weekend, a great week ahead, and we'll see you soon.